During the last days of World War II, as American soldiers faced the horrors of the Nazi concentration camps, liberating one after the other, a unique group of soldiers opted to defy the soul-wrenching events taking place all around them by putting together a highly unusual mission to save a group of exceptional horses. The stallions belonged to a unique breed of racing horses known as the Lipizzaner. The last of these invaluable animals were now in the Czechoslovakian village of Hostau, right in the middle of the destructive path of the Red Army, which would soon rage through the region. Knowing the mercilessness of the Russians, the American and German soldiers joined forces to save the unique beasts and their Spanish riding school in Vienna. With the help of the exiled Russian prince and his riders, the daring team secured the town and the horses within. But the newly formed alliance would soon be tested when an enraged rogue group of SS troopers assaulted the defenders with everything they had. Soon, the Americans, Germans, and Russians found themselves fighting side by side, only one of two such instances during the entire war. German Stallion Reborn. As with all other aspects of military development, the Western Allies severely limited Germany's ability to keep horses after World War I and the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. The agreement forced them to export most of what they bred to hamper any efforts to rebuild a military force. As such, horses became a rare commodity in post-war Germany. Meanwhile, a strong horse-breeding culture was flourishing in Austria, sponsored by the monarchy and the local aristocrats. The Austrians invested heavily in the Spanish riding school in Vienna, where spectacular equestrian shows would be hosted in lavishly decorated arenas equipped with exuberant chandeliers hanging from their ceilings and a colossal portrait of Emperor Charles VI hanging on the wall. As soon as Adolf Hitler consolidated his power, he ordered to increase the horse breeding programs for both military and civilian purposes, appointing famed German hippologist Gustav Rau as the master of horses for the German army. The scheme was highly successful, and Germany was soon breeding significant amounts of horses. Then, when World War II broke out, the Germans pushed their horse reserves to the very limit, getting to a point in which they were replacing 6,000 horses each month due to the heavy losses. During the entirety of the war, the Germans used close to 3 million horses, with 60% losing their lives. The perfect horse. Hitler had revitalized Germany's horse-breeding capabilities during the war, and he eventually sought to take that idea one step further. Just as the Nazi Party had become viciously obsessed with creating the perfect German man through eugenics, German horse breeders also decided they could breed a unique horse capable of surpassing any other in the world. It would be the ideal horse for the ideal German man. With the annexation of Austria, Hitler had access to more breeding grounds and dominion over the renowned Jano Podlaski stud farm in Poland and the Spanish riding school of Vienna. As such, Hitler's chief of breeding, Gustav Rau, traveled the world looking for the finest racing horse specimens to begin his work. Meanwhile, the German breeders gathered dozens of Lipizzaner horses and began reproducing them in large numbers to eventually breed them with others and create the perfect species. Horsetown. By the spring of 1945, the war had torn through Eastern Europe, Austria, and parts of Germany, and most of the breeding farms in war-torn Europe had been destroyed long ago. One of the last remaining bastions of safety for thoroughbred horses was a farm in the Czechoslovakian village of Hostau, where Gustav Rau had appointed veterinarian Rudolf Lessing to care for the prized beasts. Lessing's farm and its approximately 300 pureblood horses were amid Europe's last Lipizzaner breeding grounds, but the roaring thunder of the Soviet artillery could be constantly heard in the distance. In a last desperate letter, Rau wrote to Lessing relaying instructions, listing specific officers in the American and Soviet armies he should plead to if the war was lost to save the horses. By April, the German command structure was fractured beyond repair as communications faltered and loyalties waned. As such, many German pockets of resistance were now operating independently, with little contact with the German high command. Amid such chaos, Lessing decided to risk being shot as a traitor before witnessing what the Russians would do to the horses. His fears were not unfounded, as there were plenty of reports of priceless breeding racing horses being shot by Soviet soldiers when they refused to haul cargo, or even being eaten by the starving Red Army. Leaving all patriotism behind, Lessing snuck west to find the American battlefront line, where he had stumbled upon Charles Hancock Hank Reed, colonel of the Army's 2nd Cavalry Group under General George Patton. The American horsemen became immediately invested in the plight and went directly to General Patton, explaining the situation and suggesting arranging a special operation to secure the horses and guarantee their safety. Patton, a horse lover who had competed in the 1912 Olympic pentathlon, felt sympathy, but also feared the public scrutiny he would face if an operation to save a bunch of horses went south. Even so, he responded with 5 words, quote, "Get them. Make it fast." Ragtag Team. Hank Reed sent Tom Stewart, a Tennessee senator's son and experienced horseman, with Lessing. Together, the two men embarked on the dangerous and ambitious diplomatic mission of convincing the German troops to work with them for the horses' sake. Most of the local German commanders refused, alleging that working with the Americans would be an act of treason and that every German involved would end up being shot. Nevertheless, after continuous insistence, the commander in charge of the hostile region reconsidered and returned a message to Stewart asking, quote, "How many panzers can you bring?" The commander was willing to surrender to a large enough American force to avoid suspicions. Despite Patton's unwillingness to commit a sizable American force to the cause, Reed and Stewart assembled a group of 2 small cavalry reconnaissance troops with M8 scout cars, some M8 howitzer motor carriages, 2 M24 Chaffee light tanks, and a screening infantry force of 325 men. As the force stormed hostile, the Germans quickly emerged, waving a white bedsheet as a flag. A formal surrender ceremony took place. The Nazi flag went down, and the American one was flown over the village. The small town and farm were liberated, the horses secured, and 300 prisoners of war were freed. The first part of the operation was over, but now came the matter of moving 300 horses out of the area before the Soviets arrived. Escaping. The area was within what the Allies had deemed Soviet territory, so they would need to move fast before the Soviets claimed the farms and all the rescued horses within. However, the region was still plagued with dozens of pockets of German resistance, and the small American force would need reinforcements if it was to succeed. Fortunately, many of the liberated prisoners decided to join the fight, increasing the size of the defenders' team. To increase the number of men helping with the cause, Stewart also contacted a group of anti-communist Russian Cossacks who'd been operating in the area, commanded by a Russian prince who wanted to free his country from the Bolsheviks. The group of skilled riders was fleeing from the Soviets after the prince helped the Axis powers when the German invasion of the USSR began. The odd group of misfits willingly accepted to join and save the horses without realizing their uneasy alliance was about to be tested. The battle. As the American-led task force prepared for evacuation from the breeding farm, their outpost was suddenly attacked by a large group of light infantry troops using guerrilla tactics. The attackers were the remnants of the SS Regiment Deutschland, a group of Nazi fanatics enraged to see the Germans and Americans fighting together. Bullets rang throughout the rural village as soldiers took cover behind stables and farmhouses. The SS troopers carried out their assault aggressively but quickly, constantly moving from one point to the next to avoid being cornered by the Americans and their allies. At that point, American soldiers, German troopers, and Russian Cossacks at war with each other fought side by side to repel the attack of the SS force. The fierce battle lasted over 5 hours, with the SS soldiers carrying out several attacks during the encounter. Nevertheless, the SS troopers' lack of armor support put them at an enormous disadvantage, and they were forced to retreat before the advancing might of the American tanks. The task force was forced to delay the evacuation because of the battle, but the Russians were now just a few miles away. Moreover, the farm was running out of food for the stallions. For Stewart and Lessing, the fear of losing the horses to the Soviets was more significant than ever, and Lessing was also worried that the nearby Spanish riding school of Vienna, where many of his Lipizzaner horses were trained, would be ransacked and destroyed by the Soviet onslaught. Patton's command. Alois Podolsky, the director of the Spanish riding school in Vienna, found out that Patton was approaching and invited the general for a personalized show and tour of the facilities. Podaczky then showed the general a particular purebred horse that had been selected personally by Hitler as a gift for the Japanese emperor. Patton then asked to ride the iconic horse and even had his picture taken. Podaczky then took off his hat and said, quote, "The great American nation, which had been singled out to save European culture from destruction, will certainly interest itself also in this ancient academy. So I'm sure I'll not plead in vain in asking you, General, for your special protection and help for the protection of the Spanish riding school." Moved by everything he'd witnessed, Patton officially declared the farm at Hostau and the Spanish riding school of Vienna as specially protected territories of the U.S. Army. Not even the invading Soviets could claim the cultural sites or the horses within them, even if they were within their territories. Soon after, the 300 Lipizzanas were taken back to U.S.-controlled German territory, and 150 were selected and shipped to the U.S. as spoils of war. Thank you for watching our video. Don't hesitate to explore our other Dark Documentaries channels for more thrilling wartime stories and facts about the most lethal weapons ever created. We publish new content regularly, so stay tuned.